So today I'll be refuting the claim that tap water is more beneficial than bottled water. My opponent, his main claims were that tap water is regulated effectively, two, that tap water has health benefits that most bottled waters lack, and finally, that the plastic from the bottled waters has environmental risks. So I'm going to start with the first point, that tap water is regulated effectively. It is true what he said, that tap water is regulated by the EPA, and that in general it's safe to drink. However, according to an investigation by the Environmental Working Group, public water supplies in 42 U.S. states are contaminated with over 141 unregulated chemicals for which the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, has never established safety standards. So while the EPA does regulate these sources, this study proves that the regulations fall short of where they need to be. In fact, bottled water is better regulated than tap water. According to a pamphlet distributed by the EPA, bottled water is regulated by the FDA in addition to private organizations which certify the water as pure. These include the International Bottled Water Association, the NSF International, and Underwriters Laboratories. So that means that if the producers of these bottled waters wish to sell more product, they will go out and try and get their water certified and make sure that it's pure. So this brings me to his second claim, that tap water has health benefits that most bottled waters lack. My opponent claimed that bottled water lacks many beneficial metals, such as fluoride, calcium, and magnesium. He was right in telling us that these minerals are sometimes initially filtered out of the bottled water, but made a false presumption that they remain removed. As explained in an article by BYOB Water Store Incorporated, metals such as calcium, fluoride, and magnesium are added to some bottled waters and are sold as purified mineral water. Also, the EPA, the same group responsible for ensuring the quality of the tap water, estimates that volatile organic compounds are present in 1/5 of the nation's tap water supply. So that's just showing that tap water might not be as safe as you think it is. Finally, my opponent's third claim was that plastic from bottled water has environmental risks. While my opponent did prove that the plastic from bottled water has a negative effect on our environment, the issue is not necessarily relevant. Because his main claim that tap water is more beneficial than bottled water. The discussion was on the quality and the health advantages tap water has over bottled water and not the environmental impact. So in conclusion, my opponent made the claim that tap water is more beneficial than bottled water. He supported his claims with three main subclaims. First, tap water is regulated effectively. Second, that tap water has health benefits that most bottled waters lack. And finally, that the plastic from bottled water has environmental risks. I provided information which countered his claims, providing evidence that suggests that bottled water is in fact more beneficial than tap water.
All right, structural things are fine. I thought that you did a good job presenting counterclaims on most of the points. You had a nice counterclaim on the lack of regulation on particular chemicals by the EPA and lack of standards for some of the things that might be in tap water. So I thought that was pretty solid. And then you had a nice counterclaim on actual regulations of bottled water. You mentioned the FDA, a whole bunch of private organizations, Underwriters Laboratory. It would be helpful if you could make that argument a little bit stronger by showing how strong those regulations are. The FDA regulations, for instance, do they protect the content of, effluents or those other kinds of contaminants that the EPA doesn't have? Are all bottled waters regulated by the private groups that you mentioned? How widespread is awareness about those particular ratings? I think those would be some things that would strengthen that argument, but I thought that you had a good point on it. The transition to the second point was pretty clear. You challenge the advocate's generalization. You, in essence, say that they do have those kinds of minerals in the water. It's just marketed as purified mineral water. It would be nice to know what percentage of the market of bottled water represents the kind of water that has these active ingredients. And then you kind of go back to the same argument that you had on the first point, which was that tap water is likely to have a whole variety of organic compounds in it, which apparently get filtered out by the bottled water groups. Your last point is an interesting one because you're trying to challenge the relevance of that particular point. I think there are a couple of ways to challenge the relevance. One is that maybe a kind of a cheap reaction, and that is that there's a difference between challenging the quality of the water and challenging the delivery system. And if we wanted to compare the delivery systems, then we ought to be looking at the piping and the problems with it that the local water systems have, in contrast to the toxic issues that the bottles present. I'm not exactly sure why an environmental impact is not a health issue, and I think you need to explain why it isn't automatically a health issue. You just sort of say they're different and then move on. I thought you had a very effective summary, but there are places where you could make the argument a little bit more substantive if you could pack it in a little bit more. All right. Thank you.